What is up, ladies, gentlemen, and my NB friends? I'm Paul, the Commander Theorist, and I'd like to thank you for taking the time today as we'd like to talk about the new upcoming set, Magic 2019. This is going to mark Magic's return to core sets, which are meant to be a more lighter form of Magic gameplay to be especially more accessible to newer players. Mechanics from these sets are often a lot less complex. That being said, however, Magic 2019 does feature quite a few new cards in it that are especially helpful to the Commander format. From new Commander options to powerful reprints, once again Wizards is showing that they are learning how to put good things in new sets. And with that in mind, we are here today to discuss the top 10 cards in Magic Core Set 2019 for the Commander format. Tap that like button and let's begin. As our honorable mention, I want to give the Sigil Sword of Valor a little love. This is a great equipment card from the set, especially given Ariel from Dominaria that would love some Knight tokens. Not only does this card give a pretty hefty buff to power, but whenever the equipped creature, who also gains Vigilance, attacks, you get a 2/2 Knight with Vigilance, who's also attacking. So this can help us build up an army of Knights, which I definitely can get behind. At number 10, we have the Runic Arm Sword. As a note, I'm very thankful that Wizards did not choose to make Ixalan the only set with dinosaurs, and that we have seen some in the sets following it. Though this little Stegosaurus is pretty hefty. This 3-drop has 5 toughness, which can make it quite the effective blocker early game, and whenever an opponent activates an ability of either a creature or a land that's not a mana ability, or an ability that produces mana, you get to draw a card. So this thing is defensive and card draw on a very beefy stick. Very useful in decks that need some card draw, especially in green, and given how many abilities most Commander decks run through utility lands or abilities of creatures, you're going to get a lot of value off of this. Coming in at number 9 is the Black Enchantment, Open the Graves. I'm a big fan of graveyard-centric decks like Marin of Clan Nel Toth, and so this card gives us extra value out of those creatures dying. While this card's value is sort of diminished in a deck that will produce a lot of creature tokens, in a deck where token generation isn't super big, this card will shine. What I really was sold on with this card is that the zombie tokens that it produces do not come into play tapped, which is often the case for zombie tokens, and it really does hinder the deck's ability to take off. This is even better after a board wipe, as every one of your dying creatures will not leave without giving you a little zombie for your troubles. This might take a little bit more for a specific deck type than being for a general use card, but it definitely makes this list. Now at number 8 we have Victus Asmadi the Dire. This core set is unique that we actually see the return of the Elder Dragons, which for you longtime Commander fans is a very neat callback to the origins of the format. EDH, which was the original name for Commander, was an acronym for Elder Dragon Highlander. The 21 damage we use as Commander damage originates from the shared 7 power of the 5 original Elder Dragons being hit 3 times by them and you lose. I actually don't think many of these dragons are all that great from this set for various reasons, but I do want to mention 2 specifically as I personally like their abilities and what kind of deck they might offer. With Victus, we see a very cruel control style ability that lets you pick permanents that your opponents control whenever it attacks, which can include lands. And then those permanents are sacrificed, so again, this gets around indestructibility and Shroud. Actually, no, it doesn't get around Shroud. Then, those players who sacrificed a permanent get to reveal their top deck, and should it be another permanent, they get to drop that into play for free. So this is very much like a stronger form of a Chaos Warp ability, but you can easily use this to take out whatever each opponent's strongest threat, and then they have to hope that their top deck is something worth having lost their cards over. As for its effect on you, rather than you sacrificing your strongest card, you can just pick something not so good, maybe a token, and then most likely you'll be upgrading it to something stronger. In this deck, you'll obviously want to run a lot more permanents to capitalize on this effect, and I really like this ability as in black and green, we're definitely going to have ways to help make opponents lose even more permanents and possibly even steal their cards as they're dying. I might even have to go deeper onto this one in a possible Commander Theorem video in the near future. The next Elder Dragon is actually our number 7 spot, Arcades the Strategist. This is a really neat Bant color dragon with flying and vigilance, which are 2 excellent keyword abilities, and what's really neat about Arcades is the ability that it brings to the table. This is what I would consider our first actual wall tribal commander, as Arcades deals in creatures with Defender. or walls. Whenever a creature with Defender enters the battlefield under your control, you get to draw a card. So right off the bat, cards like Wall of Blossoms will give you double the value. Arcadi's second ability lets those creatures with Defender attack as though they didn't have Defender, and it lets them assign their combat damage using their toughness rather than their power. This is an ability we've only seen a few times before in Duran the Siege Tower and Assault Formation. We have yet to see it having access to blue though. Nevertheless, this is a powerful ability for a deck that will probably sprout out in a very powerful way, and I really like this ability out of all the new legendary creatures and will likely be taking a shot at building this myself. Now our number 6 spot goes somewhat reluctantly to Tezzeret Artifice Master. Alright, let me just talk about Planeswalker decks in Commander. I get the allure, and I get why people enjoy Super Friends decks, but to me, I've kind of grown to dislike them because of how very uninteractive I find them. Tezzeret is on this list only because of the value his Ultimate's emblem can offer. And in a Super Friends deck, most of the time, this is what brings a specific Planeswalker into the deck over another. Because we're using something like Doubling Season, more than likely in that deck, you're going to be able to get those Ultimates off a lot quicker. Tezzeret, unfortunately, can't offer a whole lot otherwise. The 1/1 Thopter token is good, as it defends him and your other walkers from one creature. His middle ability doesn't really do so much in a Super Friends deck, as you're likely not going to be running a whole lot of artifacts over enchantments. It's that ultimate ability is where this value will really come out in Commander, and what's earned him that 6th spot on the list. Let's hop onto a better foot. Coming in at number 5 is Scapeshift. Now, I actually have heard of the Scapeshift deck in other formats, though I didn't really know what it or Scapeshift even did because I'm uncultured and inattentive. But for Commander, I really like the potential that I see in this card, as this is the first time I've seen this card, so forgive me for my lack of knowing what it can do. But for my first take on this card, I see a lot of vitality in being a sorcery speed mana fixer. So say you have 4 lands in a multicolored deck, but they're all green and they do absolutely nothing for your current state. You drop this, you sacrifice whatever lands you don't need, and then tutor out the ones you do need. I'm doing this right? This can also see some play in decks like the Gitrog Monster. I see Omnath decks liking this, general landfall decks, things that'll want to be able to cycle through your lands a lot quicker. This is definitely going to go into them. At number 4 is a card that I really want from my beloved Ishai and Rayhan deck, the Hungary Hydra. This is a hell of a cool Hydra card, coming in with however many +1/+1 counters that you want to spend that extra mana on. It can only be blocked by 1 creature max, and whenever it's dealt damage, should it survive, it gets counters equal to the damage it was dealt. So unless your opponent can kill this thing when it's blocking it, it's only going to get bigger. And that's a very scary situation to be in because chump blockers are suddenly disadvantageous. But I definitely like the potential for this thing, especially if we can give it double strike or trample. Let's start dishing out damage. Now number 3 is a card I was really thrilled to see it find its way into a reprint at last. Omniscience, the most powerful blue enchantment that's not Rhystic Study. This is an amazing finisher card, all in all. And what I mean by that is if you cast this thing and somehow do not win the game, you've clearly missed something along the way. You don't need your mana anymore after this card comes out for your spells, so you can play everything for free. Cast something like Enter the Infinite with this, and you'd better win right then and there. Yes, it does cost 10 mana and is very steep in blue mana, but on the same note, you also get a humongous boon for it that everyone else is going to be really strapped for. And so, for that reason, it makes number 3. Now, we do have another honorable mention that comes in for the number 2 spot, as this card was something I really wanted to point out for its sheer value for the format, but because of its very narrow usage in that sense, I didn't think it appropriate to put it on the list, but if it did make it to the list somehow, this is probably where it would end up. Sun Cleanser is a 1/4 for 2 mana that lets you pick between 2 abilities. You can remove all counters from a target creature, and as long as Sun Cleanser remains on the field, it can't get counters placed on it. Or you may have target player lose all the counters that they have, and then they can no longer get counters as long as it remains on the battlefield. So, what does this have for usage in our format? Infect. Infect is perhaps one of the nastiest strategies in Commander, offering perhaps the quickest kill in the entire format. It's quicker than Commander damage, and it's quicker than your traditional damage. You don't need 21 Infect, you need 10. 10 Infect is all it takes to lose a game, and with Sun Cleanser in your deck, you can easily hose Infect players. Preventing you from taking any more Infect damage is crippling to the strategy, and will make this the perfect card to put some protection on. The reason, of course, that it doesn't quite make the main list is its limited usage outside of that. It doesn't clear out Commander damage, and in decks featuring something like +1/+1 counters, those aren't really enough of a threat to necessitate clearing them off. Now, if we had a sideboard in this format, I would consider running this to just side in against Infect decks, but we don't do that sort of thing in Commander, so I might play it in a anti-Infect deck, but I don't see it otherwise. The actual number 2 is another new card that's made this list, the Cleansing Nova. This 5-drop is a modal board wipe, letting you choose between killing off all creatures or killing off all artifacts and enchantments. And I love this card for that versatility. If you need to blow up all artifacts and enchantments, it'll do that. And if you don't quite need it for that purpose, you can use it to kill off creatures instead. It can't quite do both during the same casting, making it a little tricky if you need to get 2 and not 1, maybe 1 or the other, and maybe not the artifacts and enchantments, but maybe creatures and enchantments, but, you know, we can't always get what we want. And last but not least, the card that takes the number 1 spot on this list is none other than the Crucible of Worlds. This 3-drop artifact is a very potent weapon in many Commander decks. Letting you play lands from your graveyard is a very powerful boon. Decks like Gitrog Monster, Titania, they will benefit the most from having access to those cards in the graveyard. And in general decks, you get to recur things like fetch lands more often using this ability. Being able to reuse a fetch land multiple times make this far more useful, and I have considered putting this into Muldrotha, one of my better graveyard themed decks. Now that's my list of the top 10 best cards from M19 for Commander, but I want to hear what you think. Sound off in the comments below what cards you think are the best pickups from this set for our format. What cards are you excited to see and why? Do you think that any of the cards that are the new legends that we did not discuss should have been on this list? Remember to tap that like button if you enjoyed this video, it'll help others know that it's worth the watch. Subscribe and ring the bell for notifications to keep up to date with every new upload, and if you want to help us up the ante on our production quality, perhaps move more toward live action video, do feel free to check out our Patreon. I do appreciate every little bit of support the community has offered me. I thank you for your time in watching this video and wish you a wonderful day, and as always, I'll see you rock stars in the next video.